Welcome to the Heal Podcast. I'm Kelly Noonan Gores, and every week I speak to the leading doctors, healers, spiritual teachers, and scientists to find out what is truly possible when it comes to healing. I also interview real people with extraordinary healing stories. My philosophy is, what's possible for one is possible for all. On today's episode of the Heal Podcast, I catch up with my dear friend Serena Poon, a celebrity chef, certified nutritionist, and Reiki master. Serena helps her A-list clientele through her method of Culinary Alchemy. I love that name. Culinary Alchemy is a combination of education, integrative and functional nutrition, and healing energy. She's also the founder of Just Add Water, which is a really cool and convenient wellness line of super nutrient foods and supplements. And in 2019, she launched her lifestyle brand, blog, and TV show called Serena Loves. We get a little woo-woo in this conversation, but the woo is grounded, and you will soon hear why. We also cover her personal tragedy and her own healing journey that launched her on this path of wellness and helping others to heal. So let's learn how to let our food be our medicine with Serena Poon. Serena Poon, welcome to the Heal Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to see you, always.
I know.
It's always so fun.
It's so funny because I feel like you're making your rounds. I mean, ever since COVID started, you've been very active on Instagram. You've been on my friend's podcast recently. Like, you're out there. And I'm like, I went to college with you, you know? Like, what a small world. We were in the same sorority at UC Berkeley. We were Pi Beta Phis. And are we allowed to say that?
Yeah. It's so funny, but when you said that, and I'm like, wow, I haven't said those three words in so long.
I know, it's wild.
But yeah, it's so fun.
So cool to reconnect after all those years. I transferred to UCLA after 2 years, and you continued on. And just about that time, you kind of went through the experience that kind of catapulted you on this trajectory of wellness and health. Can you share with our listeners like what that experience was?
Yeah, so it was during, and you weren't there anymore, but during my senior year there, my daddy was diagnosed with stage 4 liver cancer. So, and you know, it was something with a blood disease. So it was something that his grandpa had also had, and he had kept track of it throughout his adult life, but somehow between 2 6-month checkups, he went from being told he was fine to being diagnosed at stage 4. So that just, you know, that changed my life.
And he was young.
Yeah, he was only, he passed at 48, so he was only with us for a little over a year after that diagnosis. So that made him like 46, I think, or 47. So that happened. And during that time, you know, he did Western medicine, of course. You know, he did chemo and radiation. He did Chinese medicine because he drank these teas that our relatives shipped to us from like Hong Kong and China, but he was pretty far along. And then after he passed, 2 months after, our mom was diagnosed with a rare form of ovarian cancer, and she was 45 at the time. So this was like, I mean, it was just, if I think, it's so hard to even remember it all. It's still kind of this haze and this blur. And she's still with us. But it was during their journey that I started to like look into plants and herbs, and, you know, just because the doctors didn't tell us much except for medication, you know, there was just no even thought processing about food as more than comfort, as food is more than just a basic protein, as food is nutrition and medicine. So that was really how I kind of first got started looking at all of that. And I actually studied nutrition while I was at Berkeley too. I mean, I was poli-sci, pre-law, but I love to eat. So, you know, nutrition is just always something I've been interested in. And then it took a whole different turn when this happened with my parents.
Oh, I think that's so interesting that you already had this passion and this love for food and cooking in you. And then now it's grounded in such purpose, and you're helping others heal. You said something to me one time about they were able to trace back your mother's original tumor in her ovaries to the time that she was dealing with your dad.
Yeah.
So it was like fully stress.
Totally stress-induced, because there was no history of cancer on my mom's side of the family. Even now, she's okay. She turned 70, this year. None of her siblings, her parents, no one ever had cancer. And from the point of diagnosis to when we were able to have surgery and she had the tumor removed, it grew so rapidly that they were able to trace back. And from the rate of growth, it started when my daddy was dying. And so, it was just, the doctors were just like, this is stress. And she's been great since, she did everything that she needed to do.
Yeah. Like, what was her healing journey like? Because obviously she's a success story, and ovarian cancer has a high likelihood of recurrence.
Yeah.
Unless you do kind of a full overhaul. So what was her healing?
Yeah. So, what's interesting with my mom is, so first she had to have a full hysterectomy, and she's 45. And of course she did chemo and radiation, but she also did the Chinese teas. And I just really believe that she also had angels, that my daddy was watching over her, because it was very experimental. So it was almost like there were 26 cases like hers before her. So it wasn't that they had a set protocol that they knew worked. It was kind of experimental what we did with her, or what the doctors did with her diagnosis and treatment. And she has been cancer-free. She went through all of that. And then I think that there was a real strong element of surrender that came in that process. My mom and I don't really talk about these things. It's very still traditional Chinese in that way, right? Things are sort of glossed over. But just knowing my mother and having been in that process with her, I think there was an element of surrender that came after a lot of anger, of course, and confusion and sadness, because she had just lost her soulmate.
So there was like an element of, okay, if this is mine, at least I'll be able to be with him again. Wow.
Mm-hmm. I think that there was. And so, and it's challenging, as her child, to have to be on that side where I remember telling her, like, you can't leave. It's not, we just lost our dad. Like, you got to stick around and do this. So it's interesting, there's always that, as you say, that knowing, and then there's also, and I'm going to talk 3D, 5D, right? But there's also that, like, existing here and the things that you do for this dimension. But yeah.
I'm sure there's a few listeners out there that understand 5D. So then you went to culinary school, you became a celebrity chef, very successful, and then you kind of hit your own health roadblock. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so of course that whole experience with my parents motivated me to go to culinary school. I just felt that watching, because my dad was such a foodie, and when he wasn't well, there's so little that he could have, that he could even keep in his system that would nourish him, and then that would nourish his soul, the foods that he loved he couldn't have. And so I went to culinary school to really study food as medicine, but also not just medicine for the body, but for the soul, right, for the heart. And because one thing happened after another, there just wasn't, I didn't give time to myself. My daddy got sick, he transitioned, then our mom got sick, and she was in this healing phase, and we had actually other relatives that were sick too. I felt like it was this like 5 to 7 year window where there was always someone sick. And I felt that I kind of went from a 21-year-old into I was like in my 40s instantly to try to take over my dad's role, which is also something that I put on myself, clearly. And there was just no self-care. I was in this caretaker mode because I felt like that was what I had to do. I didn't want anyone, I didn't want to lose another person, so the only thing that mattered was just the health and happiness of the people that I love, and that was my passion, which it made sense and maybe noble, but it left me off that list. And so I had such high levels of inflammation in my body that I started having some health issues of my own. And I would have a lot of catering during the holidays, because that was, that's sort of the time of the year that we're the busiest in that space. And after Christmas every year, we get super sick. It was just almost systematic that my body almost anticipated, this is when you get to slow down for a second. So then now we're going to be sick. And then I get on antibiotics. So health challenges and then inflammation. And I had to have a surgery because I had all this damaged tissue, which happened from, it was almost like I had a breast augmentation. And it was almost like my body didn't want anything foreign. And
it couldn't integrate because you were just so inflamed.
So inflamed. And then also, I think it was inflammation, but I think it was also just, I'm not integrated with myself, from like a soul level, and just from an emotional level. So I had them, they were fine for a while, and then they weren't, and then there was a rupture that literally just came from the intensity of the scar tissue internally.
Wow.
So I had to have a surgery to literally just remove all that tissue, remove that ruptured implant, which was saline, so thank goodness for that. And then from there I got MRSA, which is MRSA. It's a deadly staph infection in my chest, and that became my journey for the next 8 years, for another 7 surgeries, just trying to get this out. Because for anyone who knows anything about MRSA or has any experience with it, it's it's resistant to most medications, to most antibiotics, except for a couple, and it's pretty aggressive, and it can be deadly. So yeah, and that also came from, again, inflammation, stress, not really taking care of myself, and implementing all the different ways that I could.
Wow. And then, so you were already had this intention to heal others with food based on your, and heal their souls and this is your passion. And you knew that with all your research, your parents' journeys, that food could be used as medicine.
Yeah.
As, the father of medicine even said it.
Yeah.
Way back in the day.
Yeah.
Hippocrates, let thy food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food. So then you, because of these surgeries, you were like wiped out, right? You couldn't work.
Yeah, it was, and that's that's actually a big part of my journey. So I would have these surgeries, and what's interesting is I knew what to do with food. I knew how to put it into my body. I knew nutrition. I knew how to prepare my body to have these surgeries. I knew how to recover to an extent, right? I knew movement, and I knew how to sort of manage this MRSA, because we keep having these surgeries and I couldn't get it out. But after, and of course, every time I had a surgery, you're right, I was kind of out for at least a few weeks just to try and recover. And most of those times I didn't give myself enough space to recover. So, a surgeon may tell you you're fine in 2 weeks, you can go back to work, but really it's your body that tells you when you're ready to go back to work. It's your body that tells you when you're fully healed. And I would say that 2 or 3 weeks weren't enough for a few of those surgeries. And after my 4th surgery, I had this massive hematoma 12 days post-op. And hematoma is basically when there's like internal there's bleeding inside. And so I had this bleeding that was happening. There was a tear from a stitch because they had to keep grafting in, tissue. They're taking it out. You have to replace it.
MRSA.
So I had this internal bleed from a tear from a stitch inside, and it was one of the moments in my life that you can go out of body, right? We're talking 3D, 5D. We go out of body sometimes, but this was a moment in time where the pain was so intense because you're bleeding internally, the blood has nowhere to go, your body has to compensate for that, so your skin has to actually extend and stretch in order to hold that fluid. And it was so painful, I literally went completely out of body and was almost like watching myself, but then back into body. So from that experience, and I nearly died. I have angels. They saved me. I had a surgeon that came, that was from one of my clients. Every time I think about it, I have an emotion about it, just thinking like how blessed I am to have known people and everything just in divine alignment came together for this surgeon to save me and save my life. But in the recovery period, you know, I was barely mobile. You know, I definitely couldn't work. I'd lost so much blood. It was so much effort just to go from the bedroom to the bathroom on a regular basis, and I clearly couldn't work as a chef. You know, I couldn't get behind the stove. I mean, I couldn't even use the upper left side of my body for months. My left arm, and so I started. I had to figure out another way, you know, to make a living, and at the same time, I realized, okay, I know what to do with food and nutrition. I know what to do with my physicality, but there's still like a missing element. And that was when I really committed to my spiritual growth. And there was a healer that I was talking to here and there before that, someone that one of my best friends had referred to me, and her family saw this healer in person and on the phone. She was in New Mexico. And I just committed during that time to just talk to her once a month, you know, every 3 or 4 weeks, no matter what was going on. Not a 911 call where I'm in a panic and need to talk to them, but actually committing to that. And during this time, her name's Noelle. During this time, we would work on, she didn't call them energy centers. She just called them, what did she call it? She called them, well, she called them energy pockets or something. Mm-hmm. And we'd go through my body, we'd do these sessions, she would do releases, and it was just Noelle's way. But as I was listening to her and thinking about what she's releasing, because we'd go through it after a session, I just wondered if there was a way to support that part of my body while she was supporting me energetically. And that was sort of how Culinary Alchemy came to be, is because I thought, okay, maybe I could support that area of my body. I know how to support that area of my physical body with food and with supplements and nutrition. So I started playing with that a little bit. And
like the energy and the food. So nutrition combined with energy.
Yes. And so the energy of the food, and then also our chakra systems align with our physical organ system. So when you're going, you know, from the base of your spine up to the crown, and you're looking at every chakra system and where the energies that they govern, and the energy of the organs and the physical part of your body that it governs, it's very much in alignment. And so understanding that I could eat certain foods, you know, and drink certain liquids, and just have certain elements of food and nutrition to support those areas of my body. I was also supporting my chakras. So it was sort of experimental, and I tried that and started playing with that, and I really felt healing from that. And at the same time, we're working on my spiritual growth, and what I decided to do was do this for clients as well. So I couldn't cook for them, but I had all this knowledge of nutrition and also, you know, Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic, and plants and herbs, and now energy work. And I thought, okay, one thing I do really know how to do is prepare my body for surgery and how to recover from surgery. Because, I mean, from that 4th and 5th surgery, my hemoglobin had fallen down, you know, to like 9, below 9, and I had lost so much blood. And, you know, they told me it would take me 8.5 weeks to be able to prepare the body to get back into surgery to repair things. And I was able to do it in 5.5. And that was just from a very, you know, disciplined sort of regimen, you know, protocol on how to heal that part of the body, how to build that blood. So I started doing this with clients, and that's really what became Culinary Alchemy, is that integration of integrative and functional nutrition with what I call spiritual nutrition. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
It's like the energy supports the food, and then the food supports the energy centers, and it's like, because everything is energy, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I mean, when we talk holistic, we say holistic without the W, you know, but this is really what I believe is a whole mind, body, soul way of healing and optimizing the body. Because, like, why would you leave it out where everything is energy? It just makes sense. And And for some people who need tangibles, like food, you can touch food, you can hold it. You know, it's sometimes people need tangible tools to make that connection. And so, you know, for me, I mean, obviously there's so many different modalities. We can just use energy and nothing at all to do the same. But I've realized that like food is a great vehicle, you know, to teach people how they can direct that energy to their soul body, to their energy body, but also to their physical body.
I was just reading an advanced copy of my good friend Lissa Rankin's book. It's called Sacred Medicine. It takes everything that she learned as a conventionally trained doctor who then got burnt out, had her own health issues because the system was not sustainable that she was working within. Went on this whole holistic healing, journey and investigation. And she puts everything into, a cohesive kind of study and research project.
I can't wait to read that.
Amazing. But she talked about how, she works closely with different indigenous cultures all over the world, and they're very connected to nature. And she said that, we've become the reason that so many people, these elders and shamans and people have told her, medicine people, indigenous cultures, that we have become young, their younger brother, modern man, has become so disconnected from nature, so disrespectful to nature.
Yes.
And this is why we're having imbalance in our body and sickness.
Yes.
And so just the simple act of going back to realizing that all the food that's nourishing our body comes from the earth, from Mother Earth, Pachamama.
Yeah.
And so just to have that moment.
Yes.
And give thanks, whether you're cooking, the grandma's secret recipe, a secret ingredient is always love.
Always.
So that love and gratitude that you can just have that moment, that blessing, depending on your culture, whatever it's called, is just giving thanks that the earth has made you an offering that is sustaining life. And if we can just start to have that practice and then become aware that, we're basically raping Mother Earth with our practices and consumption, and to start to have more mindfulness around that, starting with just being grateful for our food, that could change everything.
It does, and that's actually a very basic practice I teach on my clients and my community. It's just with, if you have a gratitude practice, it's just taking it one small step further, right? And if you don't, you can start anytime. But if you have one, let's say you start in the morning, and you're going through that gratitude list, right? Whether you say it in your head, you say it out loud, you write it down, however you do it. Just what I'd like you to do is just connect to one or two things. It doesn't have to be a list of 10, but choose one or two things and really connect with it until there's almost like a physiological response. It's a visceral response. So you're thinking about your baby, or the person that you love, and you think about it until you can feel them.
Like your heart opening, smell them. That warmth.
Yeah, you can feel the warmth of their body. You can smell their smell. I mean, do it until now you're really connecting your emotional, your heart body, your spiritual body, but also with your physical, with your physiological. You've made that connection. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take that energy, that feeling, and you're going to put it back into everything that you then put back into your body or into someone else's body. So then when you go make your tea or your coffee, or you're preparing for food, you just take that moment and connect to that feeling of that, like that love that you literally feel physically when you think about that person. Or it could be a thing. It could be, your grandma's favorite pie, your favorite pie from your grandma, whatever it is. But you have a visceral response. You have a physiological response to it. And then you literally put that energy back into that beverage or that food that you're preparing. That then goes back into your body. It goes back into the body of whoever you're serving. And when you take that moment to do that, you're also shifting yourself into this place of receiving. You're shifting into this parasympathetic mode if you weren't already kind of in that state. And now your digestive system will process what you put in a completely different way. And you'll actually absorb those nutrients in a different way. And as you said, that's what grandma's doing. That's that secret ingredient. That's why, she can give you that recipe and she can swear to you there's nothing left off of it. And you can make it, it's not going to taste quite the same because that ingredient is her energy for you, that love for you.
Yeah. And for those of you listening who are like, maybe an eye roll, oh, gratitude and blessing your food, that doesn't do anything to change the food. But
just
there
try
have
it.
been exactly. Try it. And also there's been so much scientific research actually about intention. And, you know, one of my favorites is Dr. Masaru Emoto.
Dr. Emoto, one of my favorites too, yeah.
And his water intention experiments and, you know, how like the human body is made up of 70%-ish water, depending on how hydrated you are.
Yes, good note.
And the Mother Earth is made up of about 70% water. And are the food, the plants, the vegetables, the fruits, you know, they're made up of water as well. So in his experiments, you know, he has water, and then there's an intention poured in. There's an energy. So in one room, he's got water bottles, and they're playing like death metal, which is like, it has a certain frequency, right? And it goes into the water, and then he freezes the water and looks under, you know, the microscope at the water crystals, and they're very they're incoherent, they're fragmented, they're jagged, and it's a moment in time reflection of the energy frequency. Then he'll infuse the water with love, or play classical music, or Beethoven, or even the Beatles, because there's so much love in that music and the energy and the intention. Or he'll put the word gratitude on the bottle, freeze, put them under the microscope, and they're these beautiful, symmetrical, coherent crystals.
Beautiful.
So, I mean, that is scientific research that, you know, is demonstrating that if we're organisms made up of water, and intention affects the molecular structure of that water, then something like gratitude, where you're changing your frequency, you have that intention, that feeling, and you're, you know, sending it towards
literally infusing it.
You know, that it just makes sense to me.
Yeah, and that's just one. You know, there's other studies as well, but that one is one of the most popular, and so easy for someone to just like type in Dr. Emoto and look that up. But it's powerful. And what I just want to remind everyone is it doesn't cost you any time. It doesn't cost you anything to do. In fact, it actually will, you know, in bringing that frequency, putting the frequency out there, bringing it back into your body, putting it into everything, only brings you more. And so it's just a little reminder to do that. And we so often forget, right?
Totally. We're moving a million miles an hour. You are one of the most ambitious, overachieving women I know, and you're just doing so much great things. And I'm trying to raise a child and do a podcast and do, you know, so we're doing, so like, it's great to practice, because you're going to forget. Sometimes you're going to be on the road, but it's such a great practice. And the other thing that just came up for me, and I know that you and I have battled with perfectionism and overachieving and trying to take responsibility that maybe is not ours on our shoulders. And so for people to take that same Masaru Emoto research and the blessing of the food, and to go back to our own organisms. And, you know, we have this critical voice in our head that's constantly beating ourselves up, or someone that's overweight, or someone that feels they're too tall or too short or too black or too white, looking in the mirror and hating themselves or speaking to themselves. I mean, that's intention you're putting into your cells, into your body, into your tissue. You're feeling that. Your body is feeling that. And so just to be mindful and to try to practice a little more love. You know, you won't get to where you want to go through beating yourself up. You can only get there through starting to love where you're at and starting to practice, you know, whether it's Louise Hay and mirror affirmations, or there's a million, you know, different therapeutic modalities that you could do, or you know, psychological practices that you can incorporate, but
really simple ones.
It's just good to be aware of when you're beating yourself up, your cells are listening.
And even if you're not saying it out loud, even just the thought of it, you know, all our thoughts hold a frequency, right? That's what we're talking about right now, and just reminding yourself, you know, it's so there's something that I do for myself, and something that I also share with my community, and I try to have, not everyone does it. Sometimes I fall off too, but we have our gratitude journals, right? We have our gratitude journals. We have our manifestation journals. I have a separate journal. It's the I'm grateful for me journal, you know, and what you write in it is it's an I am, you know, or I'm grateful that I am. And you start to make a list, and it may sound awkward at first, you know, you're sitting there, and does it feel egotistical? Does it feel arrogant to say, okay, I am smart, or I am whatever it is? What you can do to get started is to think about someone who loves you. What are the things that they would say about you? They would say, you're beautiful, you're smart, you're funny, you're athletic, you are just a light. Whatever it is, like, don't judge it, because you are judging it if you're not writing it down, if you're not receiving it. That's what someone's saying of you. Use that as your starting point, and then now add to it and feel into it. And when you are able to write down, I am smart, you know, I am beautiful, I am perfect the way I am all the things. It's not just powerful, but it actually creates a frequency in your body, and that's your handwriting. And if you can even read it out loud, let's say you have a hard time saying affirmations, reading it makes it a little bit easier to do as a starting point. But also on those hard days, you know, on those days where you're beating yourself up, on those days where you're your worst critic, you know, and even though you know you shouldn't be saying these things, you still are, because, I don't know, something went wrong, you know, at work that day or whatever it is. You look in that book and you start to read those pages, and it can shift your mind, it can shift your energy. And something that I just added to that recently was just tapping yourself. You know, like, as you're reading it, just tapping your thigh. It's like tapping yourself. And, you know, if you do emotional freedom tapping, there's different places you can tap, right? But if you're not going to go through the whole, you know, the whole
so what's the
system,
it's
or just like tap right here, or like tap near your heart. You can tap anywhere, like tap your heart. It's you can't miss, right? Just like tap it while you're saying it, and it really makes a difference. And again, it's that emotional and that physical connection.
And if you think about it, like, a lot of people, again, may be like, oh, that's your spiritual bypassing, or you're doing, you know, these things, and they may have their judgments of this practice, but and it does feel awkward at first, you know, whether you're manifesting, you're writing about things you desire as if they already happened, or you're saying I am because you want to eventually feel those things. Your brain is defaulting to the negative and the beating you up all the time. So why not give yourself a few moments a day where you're focusing on what you want, focusing on the qualities that you really want to believe about yourself and want other people to see in you. And that starts to shift these like grooves in your neurological.
Yeah, you've got to create those
You have to consciously take the reins of your mind, because the default is going to go to negative, limited, fearful, anxious, you know, self-critique.
This is how you're basically reprogramming your own brain, you know. And something that you also said earlier that I wanted to address, because it's so important, we were talking about Mother Earth and honoring, and something else that you can do that I tell people to do, let's say you're having those moments, you know, where you're judging yourself, you're anxious or you're stressed, eat something that's from the earth, you know, like soothe that root chakra, you know, those first two chakras, your root and your sacral, and have, you know, whole fruits or vegetables that come from the earth, literally come from the dirt, and have that energy, that stabilizing, you know, grounding, nourishing, and nurturing energy from Mother Earth. Like, this is something that you can do just to even get yourself into a different frequency.
I remember you were talking about root vegetables. You know, they literally are grown underground, like in the earth's energy, soaking it up. And we have our root chakra. And so, like, when we need to feel grounded, to eat root vegetables. Like, it's that simple. Like, it's so profound, but it's so simple.
And that's, I mean, it's something and we just forget, you know. I always give credit to carrots, because you can pretty much find carrots almost anywhere. They're a basic vegetable, at least in the U.S. You know, we're fortunate enough you can pretty much go to any store and find carrots. And there's so much nutritional value in carrots just for what it is, right? The science, the nutritional science of it. But it also, as you just, you know, reminded everyone, comes from deep within the earth. So there's also so much spiritual energy that's in it too. There's so much grounding energy that's in it as well. And it's not an exotic fruit, you know, it's a carrot. But if you, from the point of intention, look at that carrot, whether you're having it with some hummus and dip or however you're having it, just carrot sticks, just look at that carrot from a different perspective, and have some reverence from where it comes from and gratitude for what it's doing for your body, for your physical body, from all the nutrients, but also for your soul body. And your body actually receives it differently. You'll be surprised at how nourishing that little carrot can be.
Yeah, and food is such a great tool because, I know you have a ton of daily practices. I have a ton of daily practices, but like everybo's got to eat,
Yeah, you're going to do it anyway.
You're going to be eating, 2, 3, 4 times a day, depending on what you're, intermittent fasting or whatever, whatever trend you're doing these days. So it's just a great reminder it's a great opportunity to connect to nature and just be really grateful that we have even access to whole foods.
Yeah. I mean, I love to stack, I'm sort of your like holistic biohacker, I love to stack things. And so you're already going to eat, you're already going to drink. Here's a way that you can stack more energy, more love, more ways to nurture yourself and your soul, and also honor your environment. So just like when you go take a shower, when I take a shower, I'm envisioning that water is light, and it's just washing over me, and it's just sort of disconnecting anything that doesn't serve me, anything that's attached. When I brush my teeth, I'm doing affirmations in my head. And so there's just things that we can just add onto your practice.
She is so efficient. You're crazy. She's also she has Just Add Water. Her brand is Serena Love. She's got Just Add Water, which is awesome product. Check it out. For those of you who have busy lives or just want a convenient way to get all the nutrients you need in one day, you just literally add it to water. As well as this Culinary Alchemy world.
This practice.
I'd love for you to share 1 or 2 stories. I know a lot of people are struggling with weight or struggling with, God forbid, cancer. 1 or 2 of your favorite shifts or transformations you've helped someone achieve through your Culinary Alchemy.
Okay. That's a beautiful question. Well, there's 2, because one is weight and then one is more serious.
Beautiful.
And so I had this client, and she's, beautiful woman, works out every single day, eats really clean. And you would look at her and you think, she's in great shape. But I could see a level of inflammation in her just because this is just what I do. So when I mean, it's no judge. It's just all data. I can just tell looking at her that she's holding just a layer of inflammation in her body. And she's so frustrated with herself because she works out every day. She eats really well. And then at the end of the night, she just needs a little sweet treat, But she's having like a Snickers bar, or like a Kit Kat. Sorry to throw out these brands, but that's what she was having, not recommending them. But so, she would, and she has so much willpower, but she cannot help it. And she has this every night. And
then she's beating herself up.
She's totally beating
maybe
herself
it's 2 Snickers
up.
the next night.
Yeah, exactly.
Vicious cycle.
And she is in this vicious cycle, and it's really affecting her self-confidence and her love for herself. And she's so frustrated, and sometimes she's uncomfortable with her body. And so we just started talking just like a little bit about her background, like where she's from. And she's from Eastern Europe at a time of war. And when she was growing up, something like a piece of chocolate or a sweet treat was not only a rarity, it was truly a luxury, and just the memories that she had attached to those moments that she had this treat. And so we just did something really simple. I mean, we increased her hydration because most people are dehydrated. They're not having enough water, especially if their goal is to lose a little bit of weight. Just looking at the inflammation level in her. You don't need to.
I'm grabbing water right now.
And then just looking at the inflammation levels that I could see, and just that little bit of like puffiness under the layer of skin that people are so frustrated with, even if they hold muscle. And realizing that she's disempowering herself, her solar plexus, just like that energy center that governs our empowerment, and our confidence in that power. It wasn't in alignment, and it was blocked. So we just shifted that. We did that, and we gave her permission to have a healthy sweet treat
Cleaner
at the end of the day.
version of
Yeah.
chocolate, yeah.
We went and we found like an organic, vegan, dark chocolate, and just allowed her to honor herself and the reason why she loves it, even whenever she had it. That's all she did. She didn't work out anymore. She didn't change her diet in any other way. Everything is, so she has her son and a husband, and so, you know, they eat together. And in less than 2 weeks, in a week, she already saw and felt a difference. By day 12, she messaged me and she said, her husband said, "What are you doing different? Like, your body looks different, you know, and feels different." And she already looked great, but he noticed it. And it was just that really simple shift. And actually what's so funny is she only has like one little square. That's all she needs, as opposed to the whole bar that she was having.
She's bringing consciousness and like reverence to it because it reminds her of her childhood, and she really
and honoring
understands the nourishment it's giving her soul.
And hydration, of course, you know, like increasing. We got her up to 1 ounce per pound that she weighs, because that's sort of what I tell everyone to do. So that's that example. And then with a client that I have who's actually older, who had a serious condition, we actually added in what I shared with you earlier, just about the gratitude with the food, because again, very, very, as a very disciplined individual, which is why they're so successful, you know, and definitely someone who's what do you call it? Like not a tech, what do you call someone who's just like, they're at the top of their game? There's like a word that we use. Anyway, so anyway, he's one of those people, and very, very disciplined. So stuck to his protocol, always had a clean diet, but had never practiced meditation, and just sees food and supplements as just fuel for the body, you know, from a very sort of 3D tangible perspective.
Mechanistic.
Not so much from a place of reverence, not so much what is it doing for my mental health, for my emotional health. So we shifted that. That was more like a practice. We obviously shifted a little bit the food to address that particular health issue that was serious. And we added crystals to...
And he was open to this?
So what was funny was he's older, he's open, he hid it from his family, but he carried around these crystals that we had picked out for his particular health issue, and he kept them in his pocket. Still keeps them in his pocket, even though he's fine now. And we did meditation 2 times a day, and we did a gratitude chat at the end of the day to just go over, you know, 5 things that he was grateful for. And it sounds crazy, you know, but he's in. It took about 2.5 months for him to shift, for his numbers in his labs, because we run labs. So it's not like, it's not that I'm just talking about putting energy, you know, there are data points. So when I say I'm working functional integrative, we're definitely looking at your physiology. We're definitely measuring things, and looking at your micronutrient levels, looking at your biomarkers, like looking at all of that to see how we can shift things.
She's grounded woo-woo, people. She's grounded woo-woo in science.
I love that, grounded woo-woo. And it was just those shifts.
It's almost like there's a recipe for health that is different for everybody based on their culture, their background, their mindset, their ancestral patterns and genetics and everything. And he had the recipe for success down, but in that there was some imbalances, and you brought the missing pieces of his recipe for health. And you bring him back to health through these, like, the whole recipe.
And what was so great is that he was open to it, you know, and I think that's a reminder, is just that you can do all the things, but you have to really be open and be present with what you're doing, because it makes all the difference in the world. So he really, truly opened himself up to it. I still don't think his family knows that he carries crystals in his pocket, but it doesn't matter, you know. It works for him. Exactly. So that was a great success story for someone who had a serious illness.
And just real quickly, because we're kind of wrapping up here. So many people, there's so much conflicting information about diet. I know that you're plant-based. I don't know if you're fully plant-based. do you believe in bio-individuality? Do you believe
Yeah.
everybody should be plant-based? Do you believe that there's certain times and conditions that you need a little animal protein, red meat, etc.? Can you just give us your overall philosophy for people that are listening?
Yes, great question. I absolutely believe in bio-individuality. I mean, I'm plant-based. I wasn't always plant-based. Obviously, when I had lost a ton of blood after that one surgery and that incident, I had to take in a lot of animal protein in order to get my hemoglobin back up. So it really depends on the person, and I think it depends on a combination of what your physical body needs, but also where your belief system is at too. And I think that's why it's so important to run your biomarkers, to run all your labs, to know where your body is at, and then what your goals are, because you some people do need animal protein. And for myself, it's not so much that I'm against it. It's what I do. And I think over the course of my spiritual growth, it's just if I were able to have a relationship with the animals that give us energy, on the table, on our plate, I think it would be a little bit different, so that I can honor that. Not that you can't, still say a prayer and still give gratitude and still honor, even if you didn't raise that animal. But that's just for me on a personal basis, and so it's a little bit harder for me to connect to that, and I choose plant-based. But yeah, if you're well sourced, ethically raised as much as possible. I mean, there are some small, great small farms out there. You have to do what your body needs, but that takes also, I think, a reminder is that check in every 3 months or 6 months at least, to see what your body needs, because it changes. So you may need meat now, you may not later, and vice versa. You might not now, but in a few years, there might be changes in your physical body, and you might need the nutrients from animal protein.
Yeah, I always tell people, get the data, get the blood labs.
Yeah.
Work with someone who knows how to analyze and how to maybe, add some supplements in, or different ways of eating. And then the best instrument is your own body.
Yeah.
So if you, practice meditation or do things that you can, just awareness, just basic awareness is, pay attention to how you feel after certain types of foods that you eat.
Absolutely.
Does your nose start running right away? Is that like a little bit of an allergic reaction, inflammation? Do you, like, for instance, if I eat a lot of processed sugar, I could get like pretty edgy and kind of rageful, like,
Probably
hothead.
You
know what I mean? Like, and I
to a lot
started
of
noticing
people.
it, and I don't crave it because you have
an awareness,
because I'm aware. I connect that feeling, and I'm like, I don't want to feel that way.
Yeah.
So, and I'll indulge at the times that it's appropriate, if I'm having ice cream with my daughter as a treat or whatever. But I know that I can't overdo it because it'll make me feel absolutely horrible. Yeah.
And you also and because you have that awareness, it's almost like you go into it. It just, that's why I tell people, listen, you can have your cheat meal once in a while. Put cheat in quotes because I don't really like using that terminology, but like, you can have something that okay, maybe nutritionally this isn't the best thing for me right now, and not have it wreck you, for the day, just because you have an awareness. This is what you're doing. Your body says, okay, thanks for letting me know, and then the next day or the next meal, then you balance it out. It's really about balance.
I love that. I do like the 80-20, like 80% of the time I'm eating clean, 20% of the time, I'm indulging, but I keep my instrument, my whole body, as healthy as I can, so that I can handle that 20% of not even cheating, but like just it just allows me to be more relaxed in this experience of life. But if you're on a healing journey, perhaps there's going to be a period of time where you have to be super rigid and you got to be 100%.
Yeah.
But I do believe that once you get your body back to a general state of homeostasis and functionality, you can get on the 80-20 program and enjoy life a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's part of it. That's your emotional well-being. It's your mental well-being, and it's really important to factor that in as well. So it's just it's about balance all the way across.
That's right.
So.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, where can people find you?
Yes. So on my website, serenaloves.com, and then on social. So I'm most active on Instagram. That's Chef Serena Poon. But I think that's the same for, all of our socials. Is
at Chef Serena Poon.
Yeah.
That's my pony.
Yay. Thank you so much.
So nice to have you on, and thank you for sharing everything that you shared.
No, I really appreciate it. It was so fun. Love you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Heal podcast. Be sure to tune in for more empowering wisdom and inspiring healing stories. Oh, and make sure you hit the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss that one episode that holds the answer you've been searching for. And if you feel inspired, we would love you to rate and review us so that we have the opportunity to reach more people. And of course, you can follow us on Instagram for some behind-the-scenes fun and more inspiration at @HealDocumentary and @Kelly Gores. Thank you so much and be well.